Why did Sony just drop a secret PS5 update? Did Sony just accidentally create a Vita 2? And did Sony actually just leak the PS5 Slim? How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the midweek news update here on PSReady. We have a ton of news stories to get to this week, but first of all, I gotta let you know that the PC port of The Last of Us is defying all expectations here, and basically it's horrible. It's a really, really bad port, especially even compared to all the other bad ports we've been getting lately, like Dead Space on PC, which is still broken, by the way. There's your update. Motive has completely abandoned this game, and it still has major stuttering. But just a couple weeks after Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is a very good PC port, we get The Last of Us, which was already delayed, and it's not great. The first big issue is it can take up to 1 hour to compile all of the shaders for the game, which on the one hand, I'm great that they built in pre-compilation because that stops stuttering. But on the other hand, there's gotta be a better solution than making people sit there for an entire hour waiting to have these shaders compile, right? Like over on the PS5, we don't have to wait ever for shaders to compile, even with Naughty Dog's engine, which I'm assuming this game still runs in. So yeah, it seems like an error on their part that will hopefully be fixed within the next couple weeks. There's also major graphical issues. It requires a ton of VRAM. In my computer, I have 32 gigs of VRAM, so this never really becomes an issue for me. But a lot of people who have 3070s, 3080s, they really only have 8 to 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and that can become a huge issue for them. That little game that was on a keychain where it's like a guy's face and then you drag the little magnetic, little bristles, I don't know what they are, like little magnetic hairs all over his face to draw on it. That's what Joel looks like in The Last of Us on lowest settings. Also, a really weird situation where Neil Druckmann months ago said this would be okay on Steam Deck. We would be able to take Ellie and Joel on the go on Steam Deck. Valve has been marketing the game on Steam on the Steam Deck's page, showing it on the Steam Deck screen, and then we get the game and it's horrible on Steam Deck. It doesn't even run at 30 FPS. This shader compilation takes up to 2 hours on the Steam Deck. So this just is a complete disaster from top to bottom. And the weird thing about this is Sony bought Nixes to do PC ports, but this looks like it's a somewhat mix between Naughty Dog doing a lot of the port themselves and learning how PC architecture works. The other studio who worked on this though is Iron Galaxy, which ironically is the studio that did the worst PC port of all time, which was Batman Arkham Knight. I really can't think of any good explanation as to why Sony would partner up with them to do this PC port, especially when on top of Arkham Knight, they have one of the worst track records for PC ports ever, pretty much, other than the fact that big PlayStation executives who used to work at Sony left and work at Iron Galaxy now. That's the only thing I can think of, but I'm getting really sick personally of seeing Iron Galaxy ports, especially in this time where PC gaming is a huge pain in the ass. Just to be frank with you guys, seeing Iron Galaxy's logo on there is like twisting the knife just a little bit. This video is sponsored by Enlisted. It's a historically authentic World War II multiplayer shooter that keeps you in the action with its dynamic gameplay. You can play it now for free on PS5, PC, Xbox Series X and S, and it even has cross-platform support. Enlisted is cool because it features hundreds of firearms and specialized weapons. You've got common weapons seen throughout the war and also trial and prototype weapons that are rarely featured in video games. You can even control your own squad of fighters in squads mode. Equip your soldiers, give them orders in battle, and freely assume control of any individual active soldier in your squad at the press of a button. If you die, you can stay in the action longer by taking control of one of your other squad mates. And as far as the historical authenticity goes, you've got equipment, uniforms, vehicles, locations, and more. The best part is it's free to play, and if you click the link in the description, you get a special bonus, which is 3 days of premium time and special orders for troops and weapons. Next up, let's talk about the PS Plus games for April. This is the Essential games, and this isn't an amazing month, but I still think this is an okay month. The first game we're getting is Sackboy: A Big Adventure over on the PlayStation 5. That's a PS5 game that I'm pretty sure is in Extra, but for those of you who have Essential, this is a better deal because it'll stay in your account forever. I never played this game, so I'm honestly curious to check it out. When this came to PC, it was also a mess. The next game is Meet Your Maker. This is a day and date PS Plus release. I always think this is a good idea for games that are online connected because you want to get the most people playing as possible at launch. This really worked well back in the day, like a long time ago for Rocket League. That game totally blew up. This game is from Behavior Interactive, the people behind Dead by Daylight. It's a raid style game like Tarkov, but you're invading strongholds that actual players have made. It honestly looks really cool, and I'm excited to check this out on PS5, especially because it's a day and date release, which means Sony had some reason to pick this one up, so that's interesting on itself to me. And finally, we're getting Tales of Iron, and I've never heard of this game, so I'll just read you the description from Polygon. They say it's a role-playing game whose players take control of Reggie, heir to the rat throne, who must restore the kingdom by defeating the vile Frog Clan. So yeah, definitely not the most mind-blowing month over on PS Plus, but I'd say it's at least solid because I'm excited to try out Meet Your Maker. I like Behavior Interactive, obviously, as a huge horror fan. Dead by Daylight is cool to me. They said they were going to get that working on Steam Deck and they just never did. I hope they do eventually because that game is super addicting. They also had a shooter that they closed down. They did a crossover with Terminator in it and they ended up closing it down. So it feels like this is their second shot at trying to make something like this work. It seems unique and I'm probably going to try it out. Next, we have a quick update on the PS5 Slim, and this one's kind of a little bit disappointing because I've been talking about how with the PS4 Slim and the PS4 Pro, things leaked like months in advance. Specifically with the PS4 Slim, that thing was in the wild. Like people were able to pick it up at retailers before it had even leaked in the first place. So I was hoping for something like that happening with the PS5 Slim. It looks like someone may have watched the video or remembered what happened with the PS4 Slim because they basically tricked everyone today by making a fake listing on one of the biggest Australian retailers that says the PS5 Slim is coming soon. And honestly, I'm being real, at first glance it looked pretty official, but people over at Reset Era were like able to figure out that it was just an altered PS4 Slim image and it just had all the same text because we're using the same marketing for consoles in 2023 that we were back in like 2016, 2017 when the PS4 Slim came out, which is frustrating. But yeah, this is a fake listing for the PS5 Slim. The silver lining though, we don't have long to wait until this thing's announced, I'm pretty sure. I know E3 is totally falling apart, like even more publishers are pulling out, like Ubisoft and Sega I just saw recently pulled out, and the show might not be happening at all at this point, which is crazy. But around E3, like around that time, we have Summer Games Fest, we have the Xbox Showcase that they do downtown, like they've never been really at E3. Nintendo does a huge Nintendo Direct, and Sony, the rumors are saying, is going to do a huge PlayStation Showcase. And again, that's like the perfect place to announce something like the PS5 Slim. So I really don't think we have long to wait at all to actually see this thing in the wild, in the flesh. It's going to be pretty cool, I think, because having the detachable disk drive gives it a modular feature, and I'm just really curious if it is going to look exactly the same with that detachable disk drive, right? Like we've heard it's going to look very similar and just be like a Gen 2 versus a full-on PS5 Slim, which is fine with me. I just want to see what Sony's been cooking up all these months because we've had rumors about this thing for like half a year at this point, and I think people just really want to see it. But yeah, all my money at this point is still on them putting out a PS5 Slim around September with the launch of Spider-Man 2, and they'll have a PS5 Slim special edition to go along with that game. Like we know Spider-Man 2 is going to move units. We know that people buy special edition consoles. We know that people buy special edition Spider-Man consoles. So if they're able to put out a special edition brand new iteration of the PS5 with the newest Spider-Man game and it's as good as it looks like it's going to be, the PS5 is going to have its best month ever again, because as we just learned, February was the best month for a PlayStation console ever. Like the PS5 had the most sales in February for a 1 month span that a PlayStation console has had ever. So that basically lends credence to Sony actually making this thing available and having a game like Hogwarts Legacy that they bought the marketing for really helping to help them move consoles, which is great. Next up, we got to talk about the DualSense Edge. I have mine right here at my PC. I've been using it to play Resident Evil 4 Remake, and I got to shout out Capcom because this is a game that uses the DualSense Edge natively. You don't have to use Steam input, which just tricks your PC into thinking your DualSense is an Xbox controller. If you use the DualSense wired with Resident Evil 4, you get all the features that you get on PlayStation 5, and it's awesome. And there's really no reason to play on PC versus PS5 with this game specifically because it's a pretty great port no matter what. But we are getting more support for the DualSense Edge with the iPhone because iOS 16.4 includes support for the DualSense Edge. Now, this is kind of weird that you need to have separate drivers for this controller because when you take away the whole like profile switching and the trigger locking and everything like that, it really is just a more premium DualSense. Like it's a little bit heavier. You can swap out the sticks, but none of that really interfaces with software in any way. So I just think it's kind of interesting that you have to have separate drivers on PC for this controller. And it is weird because if you go to some games that support the DualSense, like, I don't know, God of War 2018, for example, it gets a little weird with the DualSense Edge in ways that it doesn't with the DualSense, because you guys know I have a ton of DualSenses. I use the God of War Ragnarok one mostly on my PS5. I was using this black one for the longest time on my PC. I keep it right next to it, but now I use the DualSense Edge on everything. And yeah, it has been a little bit weird, but the controller is so premium that I don't mind having Xbox button prompts popping up on the screen sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I always wonder if people actually use DualSenses with their iPhones. I know you can get clips for DualSenses that put your iPhone on the actual like clip, and then you hold the controller and your phone is kind of like standing above the controller, and that's really cool. I think it's great. There just aren't that many games that I would think of to play on iOS with a controller, except for maybe Dead Cells, which I know has a mobile port. Diablo Immortal, I know that game's like super pay to win and it's not great in any way other than the fact that it's like a grimmer version of Diablo 3 that unfortunately, like I just said, has a bunch of pay to win elements. But I played that game on Steam Deck for a little bit with a controller and it worked great. So I feel like if you could get the DualSense Edge working in that game, it would be awesome. Obviously, Call of Duty Mobile, when that came out, it didn't support controllers, but I'm pretty sure it does now. PUBG Mobile, Apex Legends Mobile shut down, but there are a lot of games that use controllers. I just really haven't played a lot of them because I'm not really a mobile gamer. So if you are one of those people though, you can now use your DualSense Edge with your iPhone. You just have to update to iOS 16.4 and then you will be good to go. So the latest PS5 update has been out for a few weeks now and it seems like people are really enjoying it. The one feature I've seen people talking about the most is being able to take advantage of variable refresh rate on a 1440p screen. I love using VRR, especially with this InZone monitor I have. It's great for games that drop to like 55 FPS. It basically stops you from noticing them dropping frames, which is awesome, especially in games like Dead Space or Resident Evil 4 that have loading stutter. It does a super good job of mitigating that traversal stutter issue, which is super annoying for people like me who cannot unsee stutter now that they know what it is. But for the first time in a long time, I think with the PlayStation 5 specifically, Sony has issued a patch for the patch, which is really weird, right? Like you would think this update, which is over a gigabyte, would really just be the whole like we've improved stability across the board, or like we've improved stability and console performance or something like that. That doesn't exactly tell you what it does. And usually those updates are just because someone hacked the latest PlayStation console or figured out how to do an exploit on the store or cheat in a game or something like that. But this one's a little bit different because it's a full-on gigabyte versus a few megabytes, and it has a specific fix that Sony has mentioned, which is that the library of games was not acting correctly in certain situations. So yes, these patch notes are super vague, but it is weird to see Sony issue an emergency patch like this because I've been using my PS5 a ton lately. I have a bunch of games downloaded onto it because I have the 2TB Samsung 980 Pro in it and it's awesome. The library screen has been working totally fine for me and I sort it by a bunch of different ways all the time because that's really how I go look for games to download that are already in my library. I use the actual library menu on the PS5 and it's awesome, but you have to change the sorting if you want to see all the content you own versus the stuff that's on your PS5 versus the stuff that's available for PS5 only or the stuff that's available for PS4. And the filtering system has worked 100% totally fine for me for the past month or a few months that I've had this update installed on my console. So I'm really curious if this actually is linked to some sort of exploit with the PS5 because we have been talking about so many PS5 jailbreaks lately that have been leaking out and actually making a lot of headway. And I remember with the Vita, the way you hacked it was by using Hotshots Golf. You could just basically run the custom firmware installer through Hotshots Golf. So I'm wondering if there was some sort of exploit through the library screen that Sony had to patch because I have not noticed a single issue with the library screen over the past month or so. But you'll definitely have to let me know down in the comments below if you've experienced issues because this is pretty interesting. Thanks again to Enlisted for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description to play Enlisted. You can play it now for free on PS5, PC, Xbox Series X and S, and don't forget to click the link below to get the free bonus.